Hello, viewers. It is with a heavy heart that I announce the passing of Sri Manohar Parrikar, the Chief Minister of Goa and the former Defense Minister of India. Today, to reminisce about him, I have with me Sri Rajesh Singh, who was his media advisor at Goa for several years. Rajesh ji, please share your thoughts about Sri Parrikar.
I'm deeply saddened by this news. Uh, Although I became his media advisor in 2002, 2003, I had known him for much longer than that. He was not then the chief minister even. He was an active member of the BJP and certainly a chief minister in waiting. Now, I had the occasion and the privilege to interact very closely with him for a number of years. Now, there are so many memories, I cannot possibly recollect all of them offhand. Um, but I'll just tell you a few things about him that I found fascinating. Now, the first thing was that he was a very polite man, very down to earth. Of course, there were occasions when he could be brusque, even to the point of being possibly what his critics called rude. But I don't think I ever saw that element of rudeness in him. He certainly was brusque at times. He certainly was very to the point sort of thing. He did not suffer fools gladly. That's one thing I realized. The second thing was that although he would, sort of tolerate people, even though those guys were saying the wrong things, he would not get into a dispute with them or a confrontation with them at that point of time. But after they left and he had the space to himself, he would make very scathing observations about these people. And then eventually he would do what he thought was the right thing to do. I never found him to be swayed by pressures from people. So that was one thing I realized. Now, the second thing was that he understood the pulse of the people. I had many occasions to observe him from close quarters, and uh, there were instances where I told him that this doesn't seem to be going the right way for you, and he would just smile and say, "Wait and see." And I would wait and see, and things would go his way. I don't know what he used to do behind the scenes, but things would go his way, and so that was one other thing. I have very personal fond memories of him. I remember when I was his media advisor, I was then also concurrently the director of information and publicity with the government of Goa. There was a massive outbreak of jaundice in the city of Panji, the capital city. There was some problem with the sewer lines, water getting mixed up with drinking water, etc. And I landed up in the hospital, and I was hospitalized for about a week to 10 days. I remember an editorial that had been written by a newspaper which said things are so bad that even Manohar Parrikar's blue-eyed boy has landed in the hospital. Now, I felt amused because I'll tell you one thing: nobody was his blue-eyed boy. Nobody ever was his blue-eyed boy. Not even his closest people. He had a way of working with people. He respected people who did their jobs well. But I personally feel that nobody came close to being his blue-eyed boy. I mean, but anyway, uh, Mr. Parrikar, of course, always, even at that point in time, made sure to inquire about my health and all of that. The other thing was that these are the personal instances I'm talking about. The other personal instance I remember was that there was a time when I was in some bit of a financial trouble, and he came and helped me. I know this is something that I'm sharing for the first time, and he had no reason to help me out. I mean, who was I? He's just a government servant, and that too on deputation. But he came forward and helped me at that point in time, and I remember that not just because he helped me, but also because of the largesse of that person, the big heart that he had, which many people are not aware. I mean, because of his conduct, he was not. He was very outgoing, of course, but he was also reserved in many ways. The other thing I realized is that he had a tremendous understanding of people's nature. As I said before, He would not say it to the face of that person at that point in time, but he would analyze, evaluate, and and he would come to his conclusion, and his subsequent actions would conform to the conclusion that he had made. Politically, of course, everybody knows that he was very astute, shrewd, sharp, and you see, understand, he was an MLA from the city of Panaji, which has a very sizable population of the minorities, especially the Catholic community, and he got along famously with all of them. And he kept winning from there. You see, everybody knew that he was not just a BJP man, but also a very committed and dedicated hardcore RSS functionary as well. And he never hid that. And yet, despite all that, his constituents, including the minorities, trusted him, and sort of had tremendous. I remember one other instance, the funny side of Parrikar, if you permit me. I remember there was, I don't recollect the exact event, but we were in Mumbai, and I don't know for what meeting, I don't remember. And the then governor, whose name I will not mention right now, the then governor of Goa was also there, and Parrikar had an official meeting with him, and this governor was not very articulate. You see, he would speak, but he would sort of stifled voice, mumbo jumbo, very unclear. So after the half an hour meeting was over, and then I got to meet Parrikar, and I asked him what happened, what was the meeting about, and we just casually asked. As I said, I was privileged to have a kind of a relationship where I could sort of engage in some informal talks with him off and on. So he says, God knows what happened. He kept speaking. I didn't understand a word, but I kept nodding my head because it would be very impolite to sound not understanding the governor. So everything he said, and I saw his lips move, I would nod my head, and I never knew what he said. So I'll have to check this out again with him. So these small things that he could be extremely, and he was very down to earth. I mean, he would just stand on the road and suddenly he would put his hand on my shoulder, and then to balance himself. Then he would get down and tie the straps of his slippers. He never wore shoes. I've never seen him wearing shoe. And talking of shoes, I remember, he had his office then was in Panjim. Panjim had an official residence of the chief minister, very small place. And he would, but he never stayed there. He stayed across the Mandovi River at his home in Mapsa. So, but he would use the residence as his office throughout the day. This was before the new assembly complex came up. So he would, when he would enter his office, he would remove his sandals, and he would sit barefoot there. Now, I have never understood why, whether it was for hygienic reasons or whether he just, revered and respected the place of work. But in any case, seeing him, all the other visitors would also remove their shoes and sandals and then enter, although they were not obliged to. Nobody told them to do that. He never said it himself. So that was one other trait that I remember of his, that he would do that. And so these were, often I can think of many more, but, both his political and personal sides were amplified during my tenure with him. I was very sharp, very sharp politically, very, very sharp. I used to be amazed by his grasp of that. That's another thing I wanted to tell you. Amazed by his grasp of understanding. He would, of subjects that he had nothing to deal with, was not his background, nothing. He would just get the files, he would read them, and then, he would grasp the core in such a way, and nobody could take liberties with him. The bureaucrats were absolutely terrified of him, and they would come thoroughly prepared, when they were in meetings with him. So that was, that's something that.
So those are going to be large shoes to fill for whoever is going to succeed him, and we share our condolences with his family, his children, because his wife is no more. And thank you very much, Rajesh ji, for sharing your thoughts. And I don't know if you had maintained contact with him when he had become the Raksha Mantri. Did you get a chance to talk to him after that?
Technically no, but a couple of days before he officially, before he became the Raksha Mantri, the news was already circulating, right? So I called him up and I said, "You're becoming the country's next defense minister." He said, "Who told you that?" I said, "You switch on the TV, everybody is saying it." So he said, "Officially not yet. Nobody has approached me officially."
Hmm.
And so officially I'm not yet the defense minister. But if
Hmm.
the party calls me, I'll come.
Hmm.
So that was one. But after he became the Raksha Mantri, I never got to meet him
Hmm.
for two, three reasons. One is that there was no occasion to meet him, and I didn't want to just go and meet him simply, you know, just for the sake of having known him once upon a time and
Right,
not
right.
telling. That's not appropriate. And I was then in the newspaper, so I needed also a official reason to meet him, not just personal. That I felt was taking advantage of my association with him. But thereafter, there, I think on one or two occasions I did speak to him. I remember uh, he had been interviewed by a leading television channel and by an anchor who was not very polite to him. And that was an incident. I think it was when one of the Pakistani boats had been torpedoed by India when it tried
Right,
to enter.
right,
A
right.
lot of controversy about that. It's I think 3 years ago or more than that, in the early tenure of his uh, of his ministership. And and then this anchor used this interview. The following day, he did another program called Another Guy, merely to rubbish everything that Parrikar had said. So I called up Parrikar, and luckily he was on the line. He was free then, and I spoke to him. I said, You must you must understand the Delhi media better. This is not Goa, right? There are lots of manipulations here. You've got to be careful with with what you say to whom. That's what you say is not that important, but to whom are you saying this? That is important. He says, "Arey, jane do. You know what can these people do to me? Let them write what they want to write." And and he said that I'm not worried because I'm doing my job and I'm doing it honestly. It's taking but he admitted to one thing. He said it's taking me a little time to grasp issues here, not because I have difficulty in grasping the subject, but I have difficulty in handling the environment here, the political environment. What I think he meant by that was that he was the king there back home in Goa, and he had complete control over everything. Here he had to sort of find his way, but I think by the end of his tenure he did a good job.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, rumor is that that ship that got torpedoed was laden with explosives, but that is a topic for a different day. So thank you very much, Rajesh ji. Viewers, you will be reading articles by Rajesh ji on PGurus. He's a very very crisp writer. He also will has been part of our video panelists, and for some reason we have not had a chance to talk to him. But we hope to talk to him much more and more frequently and more often in the days and weeks to come. Thank you very much, Rajesh ji.
Thank you.